All right.
All right.
Hey,
All right.
it's working. Cool.
Cool.
Perfect.
Cool. Glad it's working. Let me go ahead and pull
Wonderful.
up the video. All right. We're recording.
Are we not
Yes, we
live?
are. Not live. Not live. Not
We
yet.
are not live. Not yet. Cool. Wonderful. Did you hear about the I wanted to talk to you about this. I've been waiting like all day.
Okay.
The
Okay.
Newsom order.
Oh, dude.
What
Oh,
there's a
my
few
God.
things. First, him restauranting, and then
He's an
the
idiot.
curfew, which I've already had friends hitting me up about the curfew. They're actually Nabil hit me up earlier today, and he was like, "Hey, bro, do you know if there's any like formal outlets to protest the curfew?" So I think he's gonna make like a petition to like protest the curfew and stuff. But
The curfew is stupid because it's like, oh, what? You think coronavirus comes out at night? Is that what you think happens? I mean, come on.
I think I get what they're trying to do. I think it's specifically targeted at young people, especially because that's who's gonna be out at those hours.
And it's young
at the
people
hours of,
spreading
like,
it. But yeah. Yeah. no.
Exactly. So what they're trying to do, I see the logic, I get it. You're trying to say that like, okay, by having it so that people have to be in their homes at these hours, that will prevent all these young people that are spreading it from
Spreading it
gathering between these hours or whatever. But I just don't think it's really going to be effective or help. I think if the most it's going to do is just going to be annoying for people. And as we've seen so far, it's just kind of become like another thing for people to like complain about.
That's exactly what it's going to become. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust my... Okay, cool.
You're
Yeah, no, you're right. That's all it's going to be. And it's weird because it's like... I don't know. I think if people are going to be out, they're going to be out. I mean, what's a curfew going to do? And it doesn't make sense because it's like I said, what is coronavirus going to come out at night? Like you said, I get the logic behind it because it's targeted towards young people because young people are the ones that are going to be out then. But at the same time, it's like if they were going to be out then they're probably already out. They're probably already with people at that point.
Yeah.
The thing to do, the curfew doesn't make sense. I think the thing to do is go, don't be in, huh?
It's
said
like
they don't care about
your curfew. Yeah.
No, they don't. And the thing is, it's like...
I'm sure there's plenty of people who don't care, yeah.
No. And it's like...
Yeah.
I get banning mass gatherings and saying don't do that. That makes sense, right? But going, yeah, here's a random ass curfew. It's like, okay, really? And it's funny coming from him because it's like... You saw the news about him being... I think it was I don't remember if it was like a wedding party or if it was just at a restaurant. But you heard about that, right?
Yeah, and he was eating with like 12 people or whatever, yeah.
And it was more people than that. And it was...
Okay, however many people. A lot of people, no masks, no social distancing. Right. Well, this is the thing, is that like, and this is where I think like a lot of with the political thing, like it being a game, is kind of stupid because it's like, why are you pretending you're not just like everybody else? You're just a person.
Right.
You're just a person. And, the other thing, too, is that we don't know if they've all been tested or what it is, But it's like, when you have to have, like, a certain public image and you got to say, like, don't gather and, don't increase the risk unnecessarily. But then you go and you do that. It's like, well, you can understand why other people are doing it, too. Like, sure, he obviously understands it. And, obviously, other people can see that he's just another person. He's just like everybody else,
Right.
So it's, I think it kind of just shows you like this game that we're playing, like how this is all just pretend,
Yeah.
Like with politics, it's a lot of pretending going on, right?
Yeah. I think
that's
so.
not to discount. I was just gonna say that's not to like discount anything that he said necessarily, because it's true. It's like, yeah, you are, there is gonna be a certain amount of risk involved in certain activities that you take part in, and if you want to reduce the spread of the virus, then yeah, like you shouldn't take part in those activities. But we understand why people do so.
Right. I mean, I think the biggest issue with it that I had was it was like, and it's not surprising, it's something you see with politics a lot, is hypocrisy. Right? I mean, he looked like a straight up hypocrite, and he is. I mean, it's a bit ridiculous, and it's like, how are you gonna tell people, okay, don't go out, don't do this, don't do that, and then go do it yourself? It's like, but like you said, he's just a person. But the other side of that is, right, he's also the leader of the state. And when you're in a leadership position, whether you like it or not, you're given the role of role model. This is someone you want to look up to. This is someone that you should try to, you should be setting an example for how others should act if you're in a leadership position. And if you're in a leadership position and you're unwilling to set an example of how people should act or how you think people should act, whatever, if you're unwilling to do that, then you shouldn't be in that position. I also think that he's blown any chance of running for president, because I think that he was for sure going to in 2024, but he's blown his chance.
No one's voting for him.
No, I think he would have had a good chance, and I think he might have even won. I think
really
110%.
Wow.
He had a lot of support.
That's crazy.
Among Democrats, but no, there's a lot of Democrats that don't like him now because
there's just so many other better candidates than like this guy, you know?
No, for sure.
So that's why I'm like, really? He was going to run for president?
Well,
there's like so many other people.
He was the mayor of San Francisco, and then he did some other stuff. He was the vice governor, so he has a lot of experience in government. It's not like he doesn't.
Right.
It's not like Pete Buttigieg going from mayor to running for president. Like, no, he's, I guess climbed the political ladder, if you will. But I think he's blown any chance or any hopes that he has. I still think he's going to try to run, but I don't think he's going to go anywhere with it.
Yeah, people really don't like him. I remember even early on during like the pandemic, people, there were people at the grocery store, like the cashier lady was just like upset, and she's just like doing her job, but she was like upset. And so we were like talking to her about like, what's going on, how you been doing and everything. And she immediately, she's just like, fucking Gavin Newsom, it's a ridiculous mask mandated, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, whoa, like this lady is like seriously mad, I mean, it was like an internet interaction, but in real life,
I think like the people that get like super like butthurt about the mask stuff, it's like, okay, dude, piece
like
of cloth,
thing back
a piece of thing that goes over your face. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, it's like the.
But when it comes to
I don't get the whole I can't breathe in it thing. It's like, it's fine. It doesn't bother me at all.
You have asthma too, don't you?
It really doesn't.
Don't you have asthma too?
Asthma, it's so mild, dude. Like I only ever notice it if I don't run for a long time and then I try to run again. That's the only time I notice it. But I just take an inhaler and then I go back to running and then I'm fine. So it's like I don't really have
either
asthma,
way. It's like it doesn't really prohibit your ability. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. And the reality is,
literally is,
especially people that like if you're just going to a store to get something, you're going to be wearing it for 20, 30 minutes, maybe an hour if you take that long shopping, grocery store or whatever. And it's like, there's people that have to work 8 hours a day that have to have these on all day, and you're complaining that you have to wear one when you go into a store. And if you're working 8 hours a day and you're
like construction workers, when they're working just normally, not during COVID, you have all this dust and stuff. Like they're wearing shit to prevent inhalants from coming into their bodies and inhaling dust and shit that's in the air, and they don't complain about it. They're used to it. And I think that actually when it comes to the masking, at least, I feel like this is just kind of an expression of our like sensitivity, like just how easy, like we're just so used to having life so easy that there are some of us who are just so sensitive that kind of any inconvenience, any little anything, like we're just hypersensitive to it and we just hate it. We just can't take it. And it just shows like our extreme weakness,
I think so.
In that regard.
For sure. I know. I agree. I mean, I think like I said, you're going to complain that you have to wear a piece of fabric or whatever over your face. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. And if it works, which studies have shown, it does help reduce the spread of it. Not completely, but it helps.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
it just makes sense. I think part of what it does is it highlights certain aspects of our culture, that being incredibly individualistic. I think it definitely highlights that aspect
Self-centered.
of it. Self-centered,
like
individualistic.
selfish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it highlights that aspect because the reality is, depending on the masks, but the most masks that people wear are masks like this. And if you listen to the audio, it's just like the blue ones that you see people wearing.
Yeah. Surgical masks.
Surgical masks. That doesn't prevent things from coming in necessarily, but I know it prevents all your stuff from going out. So it's
somewhat. Yeah.
Somewhat, right. And so the idea is it's like you're not necessarily wearing it just for you, you're also wearing it for other people. And I think when people go, well, I'm not going to wear one because I don't want to wear one, pull some, Karen stuff, it's like, okay, really? I mean, it's selfish.
It does seem silly.
It is silly. It's selfish. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. Suck it up, Buttercup, and put it on. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah. Like, get over it.
And the other thing, this is interesting because I was listening to an interview the other day with Nicholas Christakis, and then Peter Hotez also did. He did a little thing on TV, and I saw that. But the thing about masks, especially like the surgical ones, is that they don't provide hardly any protection, and they don't prevent necessarily like aerosols from coming out of them, obviously. But it's still better than nothing, right? At least. And if you have a better mask, if you have something that's fitted, or you have an N95, or something like the mask my dad makes, they have like an unwoven fabric in between two pieces of fabric. So like they provide both protection and prevention, they help protect other people as well. It's like to both ways, going in and going out also.
Yeah. I have one like that.
So if you have something like that.
Yeah.
Well, like if you have something like that and you wear it, then like obviously you're just going to reduce your risk. But then the other side of it too is that, like there's always going to be risk involved. That doesn't mean we can't reduce the risk. Like,
absolutely.
It would be better if we reduce the risk. But like there is always risk involved. That doesn't mean we need to make it more risky.
And the thing is this too, like I think like the people that don't like masks, it's like, okay, you want things to be normal, you all open up the economy, do all these things, and it's like, I agree, we should be moving towards opening up our economy, and doing things like that, but it's like, you can't do that, we can't do that if there's a pandemic going around, there's this virus going around, and no one's helping to slow the spread and to stop it.
Yeah. Like,
you can't go back to normal until we've dealt with this.
Yeah. Yeah, because like in a perfect world where we all wear masks and we all, do our part, I guess, to help stop the spread of coronavirus, like conceivably we could all go back to work and kind of go more or less get things moving again. We could get the economy back up and running. We have things happening, but that's not the case. And I was kind of shocked, to look at the COVID cases, the graph. Because if you look at the graph, you see where it starts, and it picks up, and then it dips down around like August, September. It dips down, and then it's just exponential growth, right? And so that kind of highlights the
second wave.
Yeah, right. So this is the second wave, right? But the whole thing about exponential growth, and this is kind of another one of those things that Nicholas Christakis was talking about in the interview I was listening to the other day, is that, it seems like everything's fine. You're like, I don't know anyone who's sick. No one's sick. It seems like the cases are down. Everything's fine. People let their guard down, thinking like, okay, you know what? It's not a big deal if I go have a party, or I go to this gathering, or I go to my friend's house, or we go to this restaurant together, or whatever, Yeah. And people, are like, nobody's sick. It seems like everything's fine, right? So with the exponential growth, that's how it seems until everything's not fine. But by the time you realize that, it's too late, because you go from like one person to two people to 4 to 8, You know, it keeps building. You're at 36. 36 turns
Right.
into 72, turns into hundreds, thousands, and then, now
It just
we
keeps
are
going.
where we are now.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, it's just like thousands and thousands, and you're like, oh my god, like this thing is exploding. And then like this is what's really funny is that like a lot of those states that didn't take any precautions, now their hospitals are overrun, and their beds are full, and it's like, well, that's
What do you think was
going
gonna
to
happen?
Don't take things serious. Yeah, and it's like they were fine. They were fine for a while. They were fine, and they got pissed initially because it was like it seemed like a huge overreaction because they're like, no one's sick. Our hospitals are like empty, because we had all this like area cut out for COVID, and now our hospitals are empty. We're losing money. This is retarded or ridiculous, I should say, really. And what they end up doing is they let their guard down, and then the flood comes. It's like it's inevitable. The flood comes. So
No, you're right. You're definitely right.
Yeah.
It was inevitable that things were gonna kind of blow up in whatever state. And like you said, the states that weren't taking it seriously, like you said, what did you think was gonna happen? That this is made up? That people are just BSing you? Did you think it's some conspiracy theory? Like, why weren't you taking it seriously? And because you haven't now taken it seriously, now you've got a bunch of other problems on your hand. Now you've got to deal with the fact that you don't have enough hospital beds. You got to deal with the fact that now you really have to close your economy. Not just a little bit, but you really got to close things down. Right? Now you're going to be in it for even longer, which is going to cause even further economic damage. And personal and mental health issues, right? It's like, had you taken it seriously sooner, we'd be done with it sooner. We wouldn't have as many issues as we have now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Something I think California did that was poor was every state closed too late, open too early. And it was like, you're not really doing much. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's kind of like the idea of kind of this like half-assed lockdown, that sort of idea.
Exactly.
It's like, well, you might as well have just not done a lockdown, because you just didn't do it right. And I think the other thing that's hard to kind of grasp is that we're not really going to be rid of it,
No.
Not at this point, especially. No. We're not going to, and probably I would say that because of the way things look, and we've seen how people behave and how things kind of actually play out, it's not gonna go away. Like, we're not gonna, it's not possible. We're not gonna be able to get rid of it. So the thing is, taking some, not that bad steps, accumulating some kind of more minor inconveniences, as opposed to having to take drastic measures, having huge inconveniences, and ending up with like having to take a big hit. Take a few like little hits so you don't have to take a big hit. Because if you don't take those little hits, then you're gonna have to take a big hit later.
Right.
Instead.
And then it ends up being worse.
Yeah.
The damage caused is worse.
Exactly. So it ends up being more detrimental, all in all. So
exactly.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of this idea of like you kind of have to find a balance, and it's like we were talking about last time. Like we started off like talking about COVID. I didn't really want to talk about COVID a lot, but it's kind of it's the reality. This is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the reality we're living in, and this is happening, and there's developments all the time, and Gavin Newsom is eating at restaurants, and or weddings or whatever, and
whatever it was. Yeah.
And so like this is happening, unfortunately, and so obviously we're not gonna like. We can't ignore it, and we can't like pretend it's not going on.
Exactly. I mean, look at the way we're doing the podcast right now. It's because of that we have to do it this way. And I think it's for the better. For in terms of like our podcast and what we're doing, I think it's for the better in general. But it's we wouldn't have done this, and we wouldn't need to do this if these things weren't going on. So you're right. I mean and it's something that's affecting everyone. Everybody's lives completely different once lockdown started and things like that, and I don't want to be too repetitive like we were last time, but it was like going to school, going to work, whatever it was, and then all of a sudden you're at home all the time, and it's like, okay, shit. So, yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I also don't like how political it got. It was really ridiculous. It's like, this shouldn't be a political thing. Public health shouldn't be political. Wearing a mask shouldn't be political. There's no reason for it to be that way. There's no reason.
Well, I think the problem, and I think that, like social media probably plays the biggest role here.
For sure.
Is just this huge polarization and this kind of division that we see. And like people will get like very upset. And I've noticed myself lately too, like if I go, or as I have been rather, going on social media like quite a bit more lately, which like I kind of realized like, okay, I need to stop doing this, you know? Because what ends up happening is other people being upset makes you upset.
That's why I deleted Twitter.
It's not like there's a bunch of things going on that make me upset necessarily, but because everybody else is upset and because everybody else is yelling and screaming and they're all riled up, then that starts having an effect on me, because then I start seeing everyone upset and it makes me upset that they're upset, you know? So, or that they're acting upset, you know? And so then I'm like, oh, you know, and you just see like this, it's especially disheartening because it's only like, it's all from my friends, you know, it's all from people I actually know on social media, and they will post things and you'll see like the same things over and over sometimes. And when it's like that, it's just like, oh my God, just stop, please.
Right.
You know, I've had enough.
That's,
you know,
that's a big reason why I try not to go on social media as much anymore. I straight up deleted Twitter. I don't have it on my phone. I went on it. I just wanted to check it one day just because I was curious, and immediately noticed my mood change. I was getting riled up and angry because I was just seeing like, I wasn't just seeing other people riled up and angry, but I was seeing other people riled up and angry about things that I disagree with, and it's like, and then you want to argue, and then you want, and I don't ever engage in arguments on Twitter or anything. I think it's stupid and it's a waste of time. I don't get it.
Productive.
But
especially on Twitter, like all those people, you're not having a conversation with them. They just want to yell at you.
Exactly. And it's like, I had to delete it for that reason, just because it was like, I was getting so irritated when I would go on there. It just wasn't worth it. It's like, you know what? I don't care. I don't need to see what these people are tweeting. I really don't care. You know, Instagram, I don't have as much of an issue with that because I just follow a bunch of skateboarding and like stuff like that, and it's like people with high school with.
It's like cool stuff.
It's cool, and I'm like, okay, cool. I can look at things I like and not get frustrated all goddamn day. You know?
Yeah.
That was the problem I had with Twitter.
Exactly.
It's a rabbit hole for me because I keep going, I keep reading, and I'm like, this is so stupid. Like, how are you saying this right now? Really?
And it's designed to because rather to generate engagement, really, right? I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And so people engage with things that get them kind of heated and riled up like that. And so
that was something that happened with Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry. That's something that happened with Facebook. What happened was they tend to push things on your feed that you interact with more, and what they figured out was people interact with things that they disagree with more than things they do agree with. And so on Facebook, you would see like the Proud Boys, and then if you were like a member of the Proud Boys, and you would see like, I don't know, like LGBTQ stuff showing up, and then you'd get it, or it'd be flipped. You could be someone that was maybe on the left end of the spectrum, and then you could see something that a conservative was. You might see Steven Crowder show up on your thing, and you get pissed like, "Oh, you stupid bastard," or whatever people say.
Steven Crowder is hilarious. Honestly, I don't understand really why people get upset so much, because the things that make me upset aren't the things that make other people upset, which I think that might be kind of unique to me and people like me. But the things that make me upset are other people getting upset, because it's like, why? Stop it. Pause. Why are you yelling and screaming like a child? You know, like Steven Crowder, for example, and Trump and all these figures that like get people on the left riled up. I just laugh, you know? Like if you just disagree with them, it's like, or if you think they're dumb, it's just, well, yeah.
Then don't
they
look
are.
at it. Right.
Like, why are you going to waste your time getting upset about it and talking about it for hours on end?
I mean, that's
You know?
like Steven Crowder's a good example because I don't agree with him on, I don't think basically anything. Some things maybe if he holds moderate positions on some things I might go, yeah, okay, I can see that. But for the most part, I don't agree with him on anything. And what do? If I don't feel like watching something, I just, guess what? Don't watch it.
You just turn it off. Yeah, just don't
You know?
watch it. Like,
And don't get me
seriously.
wrong, like, I mean, sometimes I'll watch this stuff because I like to see stuff I disagree with. I don't like to just see things I agree with. So I try to, like, diversify
have your
what I'm seeing.
have your mentality kind of, or your thoughts about things challenged sometimes. Yeah.
Right. But then there's definitely times where I go, okay, I feel like my thoughts have been challenged enough. I'm not going to waste my time looking at something that's just going to piss me off. And it could be, I see it with people that are, like, more conservative, and I'm like, I'm not going to waste my time looking at this if I know it's just going to make me mad. Or I see it with people that are, like, super far on the left. And I'll go, yeah, you know, I'll look at it for a little bit, but at some point I'm going to go, I'm not going to waste my time looking at this because it's just going to piss me off. That was what happened with Twitter. It was just that, and I was like,
Right.
okay, I cannot see this all day. I'm going to lose my mind. You know.
Yeah. Well.
And
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
just-
So this is what I was gonna mention earlier, where with what we talked about last time, how I kind of mentioned that social media is. Rather, I should say that it's playing on psychological systems in our minds that have evolved and we that function a certain way because of, rather I should say, how we've evolved over time, and so it's kind of playing on these psychological mechanisms and whatnot, and it's actually kind of like warping the way that we see things and the way that we think, and and I think it's a huge problem, like how much people feed into it, and when you see that. You have to think about, like, I mean, I just think that you like must wonder, like, how psychologically damaging is this to those people who are involved in that? Like, how, no, like, seriously, like, it's like real brain damage. It's like, how much is this screwing with your head where you just continue to like feed into these arguments and you get angry and whether you're on Twitter or you're just arguing with people in the comments and you're shoving your point of view down other people's throats and you're yelling at other people on the internet. It's like, how much of an impact is that having on people's mental health, right?
And I feel like
then
that's-
obviously, like, there's really extreme versions of this, like we'll see on Twitter, but even kind of more subtle versions of it that you see kind of on Instagram and Reddit and these different places where, people will get mad at you for just having like a certain thought, or people will say things and comment things to be inflammatory, or because they know that, like, people will disagree with them and things like that. And so you just have to like wonder, like, how bad is that for that person's brain,
Yeah, I mean, so what do you mean for that person's brain? The person commenting or the person reading it?
Though the person commenting it, and then the people reading it who then also get involved in it, like both.
For sure. Yeah, no, okay, that's what I
Right?
thought, just making sure. Yeah, no, there's no way it can be good. I mean, okay, think about it. I'm going on Twitter to get pissed off is basically what I was doing. How good is that for my mental health, really? And then what's interesting is this, like, why did I keep going back if I knew it was just going to make me mad? I mean, eventually I was like, okay, I'm just deleting this. But I think you're right. I mean, it can't be good for one's mental health if you're just going to constantly be looking at things that piss you off. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't necessarily look at things that you disagree with, but social media is not the place to do it because it's sound bites and people yelling and screaming at each other that, quite frankly, half the time don't even know what they're talking about. And so it's like...
Yeah, a lot of times you don't.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and it's like, if you're going to engage with someone that you disagree with, the first thing to do is to go, okay, maybe don't do this on Twitter. There's better,
Definitely
more
not
productive
Twitter.
means.
That's got to be
Right.
the worst place. Yeah.
There's better, more productive means of doing that. and having actual discussion. And that's the other thing you have to do is have actual discussion. Don't just make your point and then expect someone to change their mind or whatever. It's like, okay, first off, here's what's funny about Twitter arguments is they're not actually arguments. They're just people screaming their opinions at each other. It's like, where are your premises? How does this lead to a conclusion? Is it even deductively valid? Like, come on now, like, figure this out.
Is there anything? Is this even rational to think this? Like, people aren't even thinking about these things. Yeah.
It's what you see on Twitter and social media in general is it's not only is it not productive conversation, but it's just people shouting their opinions. And it's like, you can have an opinion. No one's saying you shouldn't have an opinion. But if you're going to try to talk about your opinions, right.
Yeah.
And if you're going to have an opinion, like, and you want to, or you decide to engage in dialogue with people, you better be able to back your opinion up and be willing to have an actual engaging dialogue, not just a yelling and screaming match, because that's going to get nobody anywhere. You are not going to achieve anything by doing that. Nothing. You're wasting your time and you're wasting other people's time. Either do yourself a favor and just get off of it and do other people a favor, or learn to have healthy discussion.
Healthy interactions. It was like I said last time too, like, you would think that because people have the ability to put more thoughts into these things, you would think that, like, oh yeah, they'll be more thoughtful and nicer, but it's the opposite, No, it's the opposite.
People are bold.
What actually happens.
I think what it is is people get really bold on social media because oftentimes these are people you don't know. These are people that you're never going to meet.
It's not like face
exactly.
to face.
It's not personal. Yeah. So, you can tell someone to piss off and die, and it's like, well, would you actually say that to that person if you saw them in real life? Yeah,
that'd be like a really hurtful thing to say, yeah.
It'd be a terrible thing to say to somebody. It's like...
Yeah, exactly. Like,
it's like, what did this person do to deserve that?
Yeah, and you mentioned echo chambers last time, too, and, this is something that I see a lot. A lot of, kind of my friends and the people I grew up around, I follow on my kind of personal social media. They're the ones who, I'll see posting things a lot. And so it's always left stuff and like kind of far left or left leaning stuff. And if you go on these accounts that they repost sometimes, these certain posts, whether it's, LGBT or Black Lives Matter, it could be whatever. And if you go and you look at like the comments, it's always, not always, but in a lot of cases where you have these accounts that are, made for like a very specific kind of purpose, whether it's, promoting any of these ideas or things. You always see like the little clappy hands, and the hearts and yes, preach, sing it, sister, all this stuff. And it's like this weird cult, It's like, what is going on here? It's like they've all been hypnotized and like they have to say like these certain things and there's no divergent perspectives at all. It's all just like preach it, say it, sing it from the hilltops, and it's like, what is going on here?
So I've seen it on both sides because I have people that I follow on social media that lean left and then people that lean right. And I've seen both things, and it all just makes me go,
right-leaning people.
This is... It's not any better. It's just as dumb. It is just as dumb. I mean, I saw something that someone posted the other day, and I was like, this is the dumbest video I've seen in my entire life. It was something about Trump, and it was like trying to paint him as a victim, like he's so misunderstood, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, quit kissing his ass. It's so funny to me. It's like, this is just as culty as the people that you're claiming to not like and be against, and these things you denounce. It's like you're doing the same shit.
Well, I think the funny thing about Trump too is that I think he is misunderstood, as many people, especially public figures, are. But that doesn't make him like not a bad person.
Exactly.
I mean, we talked about last time how difficult it is for us to understand people who are bad or who we think are bad, especially. Like, it's very hard for us to empathize with those people because it's like you would have to put yourself, you would have to like feel what they feel. Like, you would have to feel his arrogance and his kind of this I don't want to lose kind of energy, like whatever it is that he has kind of thing, right?
Something
It's
I saw,
whatever this
no, for
problem
sure.
is where he has to
Something,
win always, right?
yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. That is,
No,
he's
go on.
got the mentality, and it's something that kind of comes from his father, I think, where it's like, you're either, I mean, you're a winner or you're a loser. If you're not gaining, you're not doing whatever, you're a loser. You're pathetic. You're whatever. And it's like, well, that's shitty.
Yeah.
It's like, no wonder he is so,
Yeah.
like, his ego is just so big because he's so used to winning and he's so used to getting what he
Yeah.
wants. And
Yeah.
he's got a fat ego. And you can see that. You
Yeah.
can see he's so prideful and he's so, like, I need to
He's
win.
very kind of like out of touch
Absolutely.
with reality. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I think once you get up to like a certain level, or if you're if you're at like a certain place in your life, I think we can all kind of get to that point. And that's not to say we're all going to act like, terribly arrogant, overly egotistical people. But I think that there's definitely a thing that happens when you reach kind of a certain level of public notoriety
For sure.
or success, or a kind of perceived success, or, if you see yourself as like a winner, and you see the world in this kind of dogmatic, sort of black and white, like there are winners and losers kind of way,
Right.
which is not all that uncommon, I don't think.
It's not. I don't think so.
No, I don't. I think, yeah, it probably isn't, because I think a lot of times what happens with us is with people, and each other, is that we like to see ourselves as kind of the elect, kind of this righteous sort of person. Like, we're right, we're holy, we're a winner.
Yeah.
Our friends are winners. I only associate myself with winners, or other people who are like me, who are, righteous, elect, rich, winners, whatever have you. And anyone who is not that is a loser, or is wrong, or you're filthy, or,
Whatever it is, yeah.
it's this very kind of black and white, like dogmatic way of seeing things, where it's like, it's either like this or it's like that,
There's a big problem with like either or. It's either this or it's that. This is either good or it is bad. It is whatever. It's like you're a
Yeah.
winner or you're a loser.
You're a
It's
winner
like,
or a loser. Yeah.
it's like there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of gray area. That's something I've learned in
Yeah.
philosophy, is that nothing is black and white. Everything.
Life is all nuance. Everything is nuance. All of it.
Everything
Yeah.
is nuanced. Nothing is completely right or wrong, whatever it is. It's like there's so much gray area in life that it's like, one, I don't think we can ever know like what would actually be like black and white, what would actually be right and wrong, whatever. But it's like,
Yeah.
I think what it does is this. I think the reason people like black and white thinking is because it makes the world easier to understand. Because you can put things into a box and it's like, good, bad, whatever it is, right, wrong.
It makes it easy.
And
Yeah.
it makes it easy. I think that's what it does. And it allows people to not have to think super deeply into things. And it's like, okay, no. The reality is things are, there is a lot of gray area in whatever it is. And it's like, you should seek to understand that instead of putting
Yeah,
yourself in this box, because that's what will actually allow you to grow your way of thinking. It'll allow you to understand things better, not just what you believe, but what others believe. And I don't know, man.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
It absolutely will. Yeah, and it is frustrating. That's totally true. I think that it makes sense though that we tend to kind of think like this because it's not practical. It's not practical always to think about things. You don't always have time to think about things,
Absolutely.
And
not.
especially
No,
if you
I
think
agree.
about, yeah. So if you think about like our past as humans, where we encountered more struggle and more kind of life and death situations, if you're in a life and death situation, every day, you don't really have time to be thinking about anything. You need to be making decisions. And I feel like for a lot of our lives even now are just spent really just making decisions and not thinking about what decisions we should be making necessarily, or at least not in any kind of like a deep way. So we're trying to find like shortcuts, whether it's, a religion or someone that we look to for answers to tell us kind of like, this is how you should think, this is what's right, this is what's wrong, because that makes it easier, whether it's a show on the news or whatever it is, nowadays for people, social media, the people you follow, someone you look to or a place that you look to get those right answers so that you don't actually have to find them on your own, right?
I absolutely agree. I couldn't have said it better. I think that we find comfort in the things that confirm our biases and confirm our way of thinking. News outlets, social media, whatever it is. It provides us comfort. And I don't think comfort is an inherently bad thing, but it's also like, right, but you can't really grow if you're always comfortable in your and constantly seeing things that only fit in your view of the world. It's like the world is a lot more complex than you are making it out to be. It's a lot more complex than CNN is telling you. It's a lot more complex than Fox News is telling you. It's more complex than Twitter, whatever it is. It's like,
Yeah.
things are so complex, and you're right though. You can't always try to think like super deeply into things. Sometimes you just got to make a decision. You got to do things, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that when you can, you should try to think about things and try to seek an understanding that is different than your own.
Yes, absolutely.
So.
Especially in those times, right, where no one else is around. Because, like, for example, like for me and you right now, we're talking, we're going to be saying things back and forth. We've already thought about these things. We don't necessarily have time and in mid conversation to like really check every thought and be, wait, is that really what I think? Go through the whole process. Like, no, we've kind of already done that, and we're going to keep doing that, like probably for the rest of our lives, with like everything, and so this is something that needs to become kind of common practice, right?
I think so.
Because obviously you can't always think about everything, so we agree on that like sometimes you need those shortcuts, but when there aren't other people around and when you can think about things, take the time to think about things,
I do that a lot now.
Yeah.
I do that a lot now. I didn't used to, but I really, really try to think about different things that I believe. And for me, and this isn't for everybody, but for me, honestly, taking philosophy was like the greatest decision I ever made. I mean, I ended up deciding to get a second major in it. And for me, the way that it has taught me how to think has helped me seek an understanding of what do I believe and why do I believe it? How do I challenge these ideas that I have within myself, and how do I adjust if I need to, You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, like you said, you can't do that all the time. Obviously, in conversation right now, what are we doing? I'm telling you the words that come into my head, and I'm not necessarily right.
Exactly. Yeah.
But when you can, taking that moment of reflection is important.
Yeah.
It's important. For me, I like to meditate. That helps me because I take that moment to really think about what are these thoughts in my head? Why do I think these things? How can I understand them better? And that's not the same for everybody.
Right.
It could be journaling. It could be whatever it is. But I think having moments for yourself to really reflect on your ideas are important. And I think that what that allows you to do is break out of like the dogmatic view that everything is black and white. And what it does is it will allow you to kind of what we were saying earlier, engage in discourse with people you don't agree with. Because what have you done? Yeah. You reflected on what you think. And in doing so, hopefully you've considered other points. And what I think it allows you to do is to have a better understanding of people. Not just yourself, but people in general.
And, if I might say, I think that we could all benefit from a little bit less confidence sometimes. Like this is not true for everyone, right? But I think for especially the people who are very sure of themselves, like you ought to have a little less confidence maybe, Or when, if you're one of those people maybe who, jumps in on social media and likes to comment, I do this sometimes too. It's like, maybe just have a little less confidence. Maybe be a little less sure of yourself, if you get into an argument with someone, right?
A little humility goes a long way.
Yeah, it really does, yeah.
I think it's important. I think humility is really important, and to go, I don't know everything, and I never will, but I will try to do my best to actually understand everything. There's this great Socrates quote that I always I always quote him when I'm talking to Sam because him and I always come back to this. And I love this quote because I think it summarizes the line of thinking that I try to go down. And it's that I know everything and that I know nothing. The moment you accept that you don't and never will know everything, it allows you to open yourself up to a whole new thing of possibilities. When you go, I don't actually know certain things. I don't actually know whatever it is, political ideology, whatever. In doing so, I think it allows you to be more open in terms of your line of thinking instead of very narrow and focused. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely, absolutely.
Dude, I love that.
I understand
quote.
that completely.
It's such a great quote.
That's a good quote. There's actually my philosophy professor at my college. He did his whole dissertation on he kind of used the framework from like Aristotle's like theory of moral virtue. Where do you know this? The theory of
his
moral
virtue ethics. Yeah, I know what they are.
Yeah, with virtue ethics. Yeah, so how you kind of have one thing on one side and one thing a vice on another side, and then in the middle is the virtue, right?
Yeah, the golden mean.
Yeah, sure. Like the balance between the balance between vices. Yeah, and so what my philosophy teacher went and did is he tried to sort of formulate an ideal way for arguing, and I haven't read his dissertation yet. I've been meaning to read it for a long time because it looks really good. But he kind of uses a similar framework, and to determine like how we should have arguments to be productive and to communicate better. And so he'll have like on one side he'll have like spinelessness, and then on the other side it'll be like like dogma or something, right? So it's on one side you let everyone walk all over you, and on the other side you never budge. Right. And so you have to find this balance between sort of like a cowardice and and sort of over assuredness in yourself. And you find the balance between this. You find it wouldn't be like humility. I don't think. I forget what exactly he calls it, but he has a bunch of these different sort of like virtues for having like a productive argument. He kind of uses the same framework. And I feel like that is something that we ought to kind of hold in mind more, like in terms of like when we want to kind of figure out how this may be the best way for us to act, like just see like how we can balance these two things, because like obviously you don't want to be an asshole and stomp all over everyone, but you also don't want to be weak and cowardly really. So it's about finding balance.
I think so. I think balance is super important, and finding that balance in your life with whatever it is, I think actually can lead to a lot of growth. And in the specific question, argument, like you said, it's very important because I think what that does, like we've been saying, I think what it'll do is it will allow you can be fairly confident in what you believe and what you're saying, and you can articulate what you're saying. And I think it'll help you do that. But what it also does is I think allows you to be open to different lines of thinking, because like you said, there's that balance between being confident and being like, oh, I don't know anything. I'm scared. Don't it's like
yeah.
So
it's like complete submission or on the other side of the spectrum, it's like you're that person on the internet who like tells everyone like, no, you're wrong, like this is what you ought to think, and I'm right, and as opposed to someone who is always like, yeah, you're right, yeah, I didn't know what I was talking about.
Right. You gotta be pretty bold to go, I am always right. It's like,
or just not even that you're always right, but to be like so sure in yourself that like nobody else's perspective could possibly be valid because you're that's how right you are.
It's such a like egotistical view to think that nobody else's opinion matters and nobody else could be right. It's like, it's a little concerning. It's
quite concerning.
It's very, I think it's very, very, very egotistical.
But unfortunately, I feel like this is something that I'm kind of seeing more and more commonly nowadays. And again, it goes back to the whole social media thing.
Yeah.
You see it on social media. This is the way people interact on social media, and then it bleeds out into real life.
Absolutely.
And then you end up, because like I said, it changes the way that you think about things. It changes your mentality. You start to think that is the world. If you spend enough time there, that becomes reality. And so then you start treating, your actual reality like that, I think
Based
that
on what your
happens.
perception of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you think everyone is dumb and crazy. You go out into the world acting like everyone else is dumb and crazy, but not you.
No.
Right?
How could you be? You're this perfect. You're perfect. Nothing you say is wrong. Like, fuck off. No. Just
Yeah, like really. Actually, this is an interesting thought that just occurred to me right now since we were talking about this. So there's that saying that like crazy people don't know they're crazy,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, I think but that actually is talking about something with ourselves where we are most blind like to ourselves, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so.
It's like it's hard for us to see ourselves from any other viewpoint other than our viewpoint, because we are literally ourselves, And so I think that is why it's important. Like you have to step outside of yourself. Otherwise if you only ever just see things from where you're sitting, you're never actually going to be able to see yourself,
Absolutely.
You sometimes I think, or often, like every day maybe, you should just hold a mirror up to yourself. Be honest with yourself,
Yeah. No, I agree.
Because, just always looking at others is not the way to do it.
No. And I think in doing so, when you're constantly looking at others, I think a lot of the times we look for the faults in others. This opinion, this whatever it is. You're doing this.
Well, we're kind of like
hardwired.
hardwired. We're like hardwired to see the bad. Or we're like hardwired to see what's wrong because like that's what we need to fix. Like we need to know what's wrong, what's negative, because that could be dangerous to us, right?
For
if you
sure.
think of this in
For sure.
terms of like our kind of primal ancestry,
For sure. I think though that like you said, instead of constantly looking at others and go, oh, this is wrong, you're wrong for this, you're wrong, whatever it is. Like hold a mirror up and look at yourself and go, I mean, am I really a symbol of virtue? Like, what am I doing? Who am I as a person? What am I doing or what am I not doing? Instead of looking at others, take a moment to look at and reflect on yourself. Humble yourself a bit and go, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
I'm not this perfect person. I don't know everything. I take that moment to just go, okay, what could I do better? How could I be a better person in whatever way it is? Anything for your own life, for how you treat others, for whatever the hell it is. Instead of constantly pointing the finger, hold a goddamn mirror up.
Yeah, right. Really, really. Yeah, I think this is kind of very important. This idea of reflection that actually inspired the name of the podcast in the first place, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
which is cool.
Yeah, it's like this is, yeah, exactly. And it's this idea of, kind of, like reflect on yourself, reflect inwardly. Kind of do a 180, right? And sometimes you can do a 180. Like
I think
you
so.
might like see yourself and realize like, oh wow, I was like really mean to that person, like unnecessarily.
Right.
Or it might be that you were too nice, that you're a pushover. It could be kind of either way because everyone's different. We all have our own struggles and things. But whatever it is, when we look at ourselves, and that sometimes we see those things, and that allows us to then kind of correct, and then we can kind of turn around in the other direction and say like, oh wow, I'm acting kind of erratically,
right
here, I should amend that.
Right. I mean, I love the pushover example that you just said because I used to be a pushover. I was 110%. I was a pushover. I would let friends just use me for stuff, and I was way too nice to people, way too nice. And I'm not saying I'm like rude to people now. But that took that moment of, okay, hold on. Let's be real. What's actually going on here? I'm being used for X, Y, and Z. I'm being way too. I'm being a pushover. So how do I be better for not just myself, but I think that that in turn helps others, because then I got no resentment towards you. I'm not getting irritated and mad at you all the time because I feel like you're pushing me over. It's like, well, I just won't let you push me over, and then, if you're a real friend, you'll stay. Then there's no problem, Yeah. And that's one example. It could be like that for anybody, whatever it is.
You touched on this idea of resentment.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a really interesting idea. We haven't talked about this yet. And it's this thing really that, maybe happens when, whether it's other people treating us a certain way or something that we experience where we kind of look at other people with resentment. I mean, I think there's all kinds of things that probably create resentment, but I find it such an interesting thing, because I think probably most of us, like most people, have all experienced this feeling of like resentment towards another person, right? Whether it's kind of like jealousy or whether we see something doing something or not doing something that we're doing. Like, I think that must be where it's probably most common, where we see someone who is not doing something that we are doing, and then we don't like that person because like they're not pitching in, they're not doing their part. Like if you're doing like all the chores in your household and like your brother's doing nothing, and then you're like, what's wrong with you, and you get all mad, and it's like, I think we like have to take the time to really like think about that sometimes and like wonder like, okay, why are we really mad? Why are we really mad at this other person? But that's a really interesting one, resentment. That one that gets really tricky because there's like that kind of resentment where you like see other people doing things, or there's the kind of resentment where it's kind of you, like you were talking about, where you allow people to take advantage of you sort of, and then you kind of hate that you can't stand up for yourself maybe, or you kind of begin to not like these people,
and you start to
for something that you allow them to do.
So I used to get picked on when I was younger, and there was one point where it was about like I used to get the shit beat out of me. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, you get made fun of. No. Like I would get like choked. My throat would be crushed. I got a knife pulled on me. I got thrown onto my head. Like, I got my ass beat.
Actually bullied.
Actually bullied. I know what that's actually like.
Yeah.
It's not fun. And I know the feeling of, like, it wasn't just resentment towards him. I had resentment towards myself because I was like, I'm such a bitch. I can't stand up for myself. And there was so much resentment and hate and anger. And I thought I let it go, but I held on to that for a long time, dude. I held on to it for years, and I noticed it definitely affected the way that I started to treat others, because I went from being this pushover to I let people take advantage of me in other ways. I was too nice to people. It was like, oh, you're my friend. It's fine. I was just a pushover in a different way. You weren't beating the shit out of me, but you were, dumping all your emotional baggage on me, whatever the hell it was. I noticed I got super sensitive. I would get angry in an instant. I could be fine, and then I'd be just fuming with anger
about nothing, right?
Literally the littlest, bro. When I was in middle school, okay, because this was the year after I got bullied. I used to get the shit beat out of me. Go to middle school. Dude, I would get like blood red, like angry because Miles and Aaron would go, oh, spit, because I was wearing Spitfire, and I would like just get so hot-headed. I'd get so angry because I had so much resentment towards myself for being such a pushover that I thought, no, I can't let anybody do this. And then what did I do? I made me resent my best friends. I would get angry at them, and then and so it's like, in letting go of resentment and not being resentful towards people, I think you have to let go of hate.
And ladies and gentlemen, right there, we had to go ahead and shut down the podcast because we were experiencing technical difficulties. Unfortunately, it was just kind of ended up being a sort of minor internet issue that we're going to fix in the future with scheduling to kind of avoid internet traffic and whatnot. But yeah, it's quite unfortunate. We were starting to get into a very interesting conversation at that point, but we're going to try and hopefully maybe kind of close out that conversation in the next show. And we hope that you've enjoyed listening. And thank you, and come again in the future. But yeah, so then until next time, me and Amir didn't get to say our goodbyes. But I'll just kind of use this statement to close out the podcast. And yeah, I don't think there's really anything else to say. So I hope you all are doing well, and hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving and all that. And we're going to try and avoid these kinds of technical difficulties in the future using our amazing problem-solving skills. So yeah, cheers. Bye.